if for some reason your Zoom pops out, which it does sometimes, you can find us on our YouTube channel and also on WeChat. So, and on WeChat, there should be Chinese translation. So 如果需要中文翻译的话，可以用我们的微信视频。Okay, I think those are the nuts and bolts. I am very, very honored to have these wonderful friends and guests with me. They're willing to wake up early and be ready in their offices to talk about all sorts of topics. In today's topic, we're talking about research, but also some other things that you might have on your application or want to have on your application, or if you're not actually applying yet, the things that you're doing right now in your life. But before we dive into the actual topic, we're going to introduce ourselves. So, Justin, why don't you start off?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me this morning. My name is Justin Money. I'm the Deputy Director of Admission at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been with the Office of Admission for 17 years now. And a fun fact is that while I work in the city of Pittsburgh, I live about 35 miles outside of the city. So I actually live on a family farm of about 200 acres. I'm in my home office right now, and I can see a couple of horses out that window. So it's a very different place than my campus, my professional life.
Amazing. I did not know that you lived on a farm, and I've known you for a while. See, this is why I do the fun facts, guys. Okay, SDR.
Hello, everyone. My name is Istiar. You see him pronouns. I'm at Swarthmore College, right by Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. I've been in the office for a few years, but I've been in admissions for over a decade. My fun fact is that I was denied from Swarthmore when I applied here for college. And now I get to decide who comes here. So be careful. But no, really my shout out is to folks, there's so much to do and explore in this process. So take it easy. You'll end up where you need to be in the end.
Awesome. And John.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Lee, and I'm with Caltech. You can read my long title. Basically, what it boils down to is that I oversee marketing communications for Caltech. So everything like the spam emails that you'll eventually get when you sign up to be on our data mailing list, to our website, to just like any print brochures and stuff. Fun fact about me is I am the territory manager for New York and East Asia, and I have been to every single country that I'm a territory manager for. So that includes China, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore is actually a part of my territory as well. So very well versed with that population.
Amazing. Well, great. And again, my name is Gloria. If you don't know me, I am one of the co-founders of Initial View. And every time we get to this part, I say, oh no, because I already shared all of my fun facts. I can't just be that fun. So, but if I have to share one today, let's see. Today, I'm going to say that my fun fact is, I am relearning AP macroeconomics because my daughter is taking that class. And there were a few things that she didn't understand. So I used AI to like reteach myself some key concepts of AP macroeconomics. So you can learn anything at any age. Fun. Well, I have launched a poll if you didn't see it already, and I'm really excited because usually when I launch a poll, only 30% of you are responding, and we already have 43%. So if you don't see it on your screen, find it. Curious to see who is here today. And so far, for my panelists' benefit, we're looking at 44% students. So students, and then the next group is parents, and then we've got a good chunk of counselors as well. And the majority of those are class of 2027. So juniors ready to figure out the next steps. So thank you for taking that poll. It gives us a little bit of framework as we begin talking about what we're going to talk about today. And here we go with the slides. We're going to start with just having you hear from each school because you'll learn a little bit about them, and also that'll give you a little bit of context on how they look at the application. So John's going to start us off.
Yeah, again, I'm with Caltech. We are a small STEM research institute located in Pasadena, California, just right outside of Los Angeles, so about 20 minutes to downtown core. Our mission really is research. So that's the primary reason why students will choose Caltech over a lot of the other institutions that they get into. It's because they do have that access to it due to the small 3-to-1 student faculty ratio, as well as just being able to get into labs as early as their first year. We're also known for our academic rigor, so students here really want to continue pushing themselves when they get to Caltech. All students have to go through the first year core of calculus, chemistry, physics, and biology with regards to like whatever major you decide to pursue afterwards. So, I highly recommend that if you're like, I really want to major in philosophy, which we do have one, that you should probably really, really enjoy calculus and physics because you're going to see that throughout your time at Caltech. And really, those are just some of the big highlights. I'm happy to kind of go deeper once we get into the Q&A and panelist portion of it.
All right, so I'm up next. So Carnegie Mellon University is a medium-sized research university. We have about 7,800 undergraduate students, and we're located in the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are an urban campus located just a few miles from the metropolitan area. But as you can see from this slide, the campus itself has a lot of green space. There's 3 main lawns, about 200 acres. So it feels very much like a campus environment with the easy access to the city. Academically, Carnegie Mellon is a very interdisciplinary and well-rounded place. We're probably equally well known for our pursuits in technical and creative fields. We have 6 different undergraduate colleges, and in no particular order, those colleges are the School of Computer Science, the College of Engineering, the Mellon College of Science, the Tepper School of Business, the Dietrich College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and our College of Fine Arts, which includes programs in art, architecture, design, drama, and music. Our student body is a very diverse student body. We bring together students from all 50 states, as well as over 70 different countries. About 17% of our undergraduate population are international students that are studying here at CMU on a visa. And happy to tell you a little bit more about the institution and our process as we get into the panel conversation.
Hello, I'm back. Talk about Swarthmore College. We're on the other side of Pennsylvania. So CMU's in Pittsburgh. We're right outside Philadelphia. We're a small liberal arts college of about 1,700 students, also coming from all around the country, all around the world. 3 things I like to highlight. One is Philadelphia, the 6th largest city in the country, just so much on offer. If you love Philly sports teams, if you hate Philly sports teams, they're all here for you to enjoy and watch, along with the museums, the history, the culture. And so there's always something to do out there. But here on campus, we keep pretty busy as well. We have a cash-free campus, and something we highlight is getting students access and sort of the same experience regardless of your socioeconomic background. So there's no extra cost to attend programs, buy your textbooks, go to the food trucks that we bring to campus. And so that really adds to the dynamism of the campus life. And we like to talk about our research and our academic experience, where we're top 3 in the country in terms of the number of students we send into PhD programs after they graduate at some point. And so it is a place where research is valued, emphasized across all fields, humanities, natural sciences, and social sciences. And we spend almost $1 million every year funding our research for students and faculty across our campus. So happy to chat today.
Awesome. Okay, so before we start talking about the topic at hand, there's always a question at the Tuesday Talks for each of these institutions of like, what kind of student would do well at your campus? So, and I know lots of types of students could potentially do well at your campuses, but like, is there like a type or something that some value or that you're looking for that feels like this person would be really successful on our campus?
I can start. In reverse order. We do actually have 8 qualities and characteristics listed on our website, and I always caution students, you don't need all 8, because if you are perfect, you wouldn't need to come here, right? But I think those that rise to the top most often. It's a pretty nerdy campus, so intellectual curiosity is high on the list for what we see and look for amongst our students. Empathy, the ability to connect with others and see different perspectives, and sense of civic engagement. I think we're here to learn, but also apply what we're learning for the betterment of the world beyond Swarthmore. So those are a few of the things we look for.
Yeah, I'll go next. Another fun fact, we're testing out some new marketing language. So I guess I'll try it on you all. So I guess, we in the past had these also some type of frameworks that we use for students, curiosity, collaboration, creativity, things of that nature. And that is still something that we really want to look for. But, I think we want to drive the point home. So we're rolling out STEM Obsessed. This is going to be a new webpage where we're going to just talk about wanting to see students who are just all in on it, right? And that actually think we'll touch upon this talk in terms of research, resumes, how you talk and write about it is really important. And I say that because the typical Caltech student is engaging in STEM with the average of 60 hours a week. That's 45 hours in academics, so class, homework, studying, and then typically 15 hours in a research lab, right? So it's kind of hard if you're not obsessed in that kind of way, just because all your classmates are, and that's what everyone else is doing. So it leaves very little room. I mean, you can still do other stuff, but it does leave very little room to kind of engage in other activities. It's usually seen more as an outlet than your main driver of being at Caltech. So we want to make sure that students who come in here know what they're getting into and are going to be happy in such a niche type of environment.
For Carnegie Mellon, we're very well known as a place where students learn by doing, where you're going to roll up your sleeves and you're going to do work that matters, apply what you're learning in the classroom in real world settings, whether that means getting onto the stage as a musician, out into the community as a social scientist, or spending time in the research lab as a chemist. So we look for a lot of underlying characteristics for students to be able to apply what they're learning. So an ability to collaborate, to persist to goal completion, students that exhibit pro-social motivations that are going to take what they're learning and apply it to society for the betterment of others. These are all characteristics that we value and we think really pay off in the kind of work that our students do.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk about research because that was the kind of main topic of choice this week. And the word research means many things actually. But I think in this context, a lot of people have been asking there's two questions. One, pre-college research, like should I be doing research, quote unquote? And then there is the research-based university. Like, what does that mean? So we're going to touch on both. But for the first question, I mean, just a general question, like, what is research? When a student says, like, should I be doing research? What is going on in your brain as an admissions officer or recruiter?
Yeah, I think I'll take that one first, just because we've really had to operationalize it the past year. So we have when we think of research, first of all, you don't need to do research to get into Caltech. And I'm sure for all schools too, right? We want to make that very clear for our students who actually have formal engagement. That's less than 35% of our admitted students in incoming class. And we all can probably understand how students get these research opportunities. It's really rare and hard to come by. So, but for Caltech, we do want to see if you have done it, we want to make sure that you're able to present it in a way that's meaningful and impactful to your application. So in the past year, we've actually split research into two types of definitions in terms of our portfolio. So you have a pure research, which in order for you to count that as research, it has to have been done at a lab setting, right? So university, hospital, it has to be done through a primary investigator. So whoever that research PI is that's sponsoring you and hopefully paying you, we really believe in paid work. And then also it leads to a publication, right? Or a research paper. So that is how we decided to define research. And then also you have to then do a Viva, which I can go into later when we talk more about what that process is like. And then for the non-STEM, for the STEM portfolio that's non-research, you can still have research, but that's where it's all the other stuff, right? So that's where it's through summer programs like summer science program, and it's through like the one at Oberlin, Pioneer, for example, that would also, or like so research programs, or you're doing something that you're really interested in and you found your own mentor and you're doing this self-research. Another one would be just your AP research, IB, so like theory of knowledge. So that's what we count as STEM portfolio versus research. And I think both are equally important. Both will be reviewed by faculty. We just look at them in different lenses.
I'm glad you started, John, because you all have a very niche, specific way to look at that. Justin, do you want to talk a little bit about what research means
Sure.
to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, when I hear about students doing research, I want to hear about the experience. Certainly the act of doing research, I think, is going to require a lot of those characteristics that I mentioned that we valued. As John was talking to, if you're working under a PI, you've got to be able to communicate and collaborate. These are core competencies for success at Carnegie Mellon. If you're going to ultimately publish a paper, that's a long-term goal. You're showing an ability to persist. You're showing a growth mindset. A lot of research is on topics that can benefit the social good. You're showing that pro-social motivation. There's all these underlying characteristics that we can really, really value. And I always encourage students, think about research through that lens. And as you're presenting it in your application, be sure to present that experience of doing research, because sometimes I think students view research simply as a credential, as a box to check off. If I can list I published something, I'm more competitive, and that's not always the case. We want to peel back those layers. Want to understand the why, whether it's through your writing, it's through a recommendation, but hearing a little bit more about that experiential piece can be incredibly important in our process.
How about you, Esther?
I'll echo and elaborate a little more, but to both John and Justin's points, most of our students don't have research when they come in, and that's just the reality. Like those opportunities are privileged. It's labs require resources, connections, whether it's in the social sciences or humanities, and research is about how you learn and how you explore. And so there, let's set the baseline. We don't expect a high school student to have discovered new knowledge, right? And developed a new groundbreaking theory. High school doesn't often even allow for that space, aside from maybe an IB program and you're working on an extended essay and you've really gone in depth. But the communication skills and really being able to push the envelope, I think how research helps differentiate an applicant. I always simply define research as the discovery of new knowledge. You're asking questions that someone hasn't been able to answer before, hasn't maybe even asked before, and you can't Google the answer. It's not on Wikipedia. We got so many essays that are like, I went down this Wikipedia rabbit hole. And it's like, okay, well, that's, some people might call that research, but that's really learning, right? You are learning, you're absorbing these facts, but you're not necessarily creating output or discovering something that isn't known to our world yet. Whereas research is your ability to take that learning and start asking questions and pushing the envelope beyond what people can even teach you. So whether that's through a project or just sort of your style of learning and engaging in the classroom, there are different ways to exhibit these characteristics in a learning environment at the high school level, even in the college level. And I think research is one of those ways, right, to demonstrate your curiosity and ability to explore. So going back to the question, what is research? That's whether it's in a lab, whether it's in a library, whether you're traveling for an archaeological dig, like you're trying to discover something people do not know and haven't known, or solve a problem that hasn't been solved before.
So for those, I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room. There are a lot of people that say, well, like, in order for you to stand out in the process, you need to do something like that. So that's one, which you kind of have already addressed a little bit. But two, if I do it, what, like, how do I tell you other than like people are sending abstracts, people are sending links, people are sending whole papers, people like, you know, are you reading those? Do you want those? Like, does that really help?
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of kick it off again since we do have a process, and I talk about the process way too much, whatever those questions get at. So for us, your research or your STEM portfolio does get read. So one of the really unique things about Caltech is that faculty are also a part of the admissions process. So in order for any student to be admitted, they have to have a positive vote by a faculty member. So what that means is we're in a big room during committee. It looks exactly like the movies. There's 20 of us, maybe 30 of us. We're fighting and screaming and kicking, shouting for our students to get in. And even if like three of the admissions officers are like, yeah, we love the student. If a faculty says no, it's over. There's nothing that we can do because they are the expert, right? In the end of the day, so if you're applying to major in physics, just know, and you give us physics research, just know that a Nobel laureate in physics will be reading your work, right? So I think that's one of the things you really have to think about is, okay, if I'm going to submit something that you think is groundbreaking, just realize that the bar that's being set right now is a Caltech physics professor reading and deciding if your research is actually like really good or just hogwash, right? Like I have other words I want to use, but that's essentially what's gonna happen to your research. So I also want to help you understand that just because you submit more does not make you a better applicant, because in the end of the day, a lot of us do holistic review and it's one part of your application, right? So everything has to kind of connect the dots and help us tell a narrative about what you do and your passions. And for a school like ours, where it's so like, again, STEM obsessed, the passion has to be there. There is nothing that drives the faculty crazier than someone saying they're obsessed with physics and all of a sudden they have marine science research. It's like, what? And then they've actually said in the committee room, like, I don't get it. She's doing all this physics stuff. Why does she spend her summit doing marine science research, right? Like and I think that's because it's just kind of like keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like you think that's something that you have to do. So then you go and get this Stony Brook, Garcia, or Simons program, which is great. Those if I'm going to recommend a program, that's it, right? And that's not because I I'm from New York City and almost went to Stony Brook, but it's because, those are actually quality research programs. But they're very like niche, right? So it's like, don't do it just because you're going to have that expertise. So, and then, it also gives you a chance on what really makes it good is your passion. So it goes back to, we have this Viva where, you put your research in and it really asks you questions about your research. And I think that's one thing that I really recommend students to do if they are submitting research, and it's actually kind of a requirement. So it's not really just a recommendation. Then it becomes non-research. It becomes, STEM portfolio if you don't do it, is that then it asks you technical questions and also just how did you come about this? Why did you do it, right? Like if you were to do things differently, so it really kind of helps the research professor really understand, do you know your knowledge, and also like the passion that comes out. And our faculty this past review cycle has really enjoyed it because it used to be research was a one-sided thing where the student provided their research paper, the faculty read it and decided whether it was good or not. But now the student's able to bring their voice into the fold. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, again, Caltech is a very unique place and has faculty reading these. So in that case, if you are going to submit research, it should really, there is someone really who understands it reading it. But I think in most offices, you're not having faculty read. And so let's hear from the admissions officers who don't have the faculty reading. Are you reading any of it?
So personally, yeah, my background is in engineering, so I'm always excited to read something, but that's not for purposes of evaluating your application for admission. And at a Swarthmore, I love having the different institutions here because it's really important to research your colleges and understand what their process is and what kind of place you want to go to. I think at the vast majority of places, faculty are not going to be reading. And frankly, not just faculty, an expert in what you've done research in is rarely going to be reading your research. And if you proceed all the way through grad school, you become one of 5 experts in the world on the topic that you've done research in, right? So you really need to cultivate this ability to explain it to lay people who may not understand anything about physics, right? How do you can illustrate that with analogies? And so the, you know, there's expertise, but there's also time. We don't have time to browse through 40-page research papers. Folks may glimpse at an abstract and quotes from the committee room. It's like, this student sounds really smart, by virtue of the fact that I have no idea what they're talking about. But if we have no idea what you're talking about, that doesn't really help us understand the impact or the potential impact and importance of that work. And I think the reason communication is so important to us and the ability to articulate research is it's just like any other extracurricular activity, whether it's research or something else. I'm interested in 2 things. How has this impacted the people, the community, the world around you? How have you shared this with other people? Not just I nerded out on Wikipedia and, derived some new equations or explored some new literature for my own enjoyment. But how do you intend for this to impact, and how do you bring others into the fold? We're educational institutions, and a big part of research is also mentoring and teaching future researchers, right? And so you may not just be operating in a silo. You're going to be part of a team. You're going to be working with faculty and other students as you come to engage in research on our campus as well. So yeah, I'll stop there I'll pause there.
A lot of similarities for Carnegie Mellon. In our office, it's being reviewed by an admission committee. That committee is made up of folks that are very intelligent, very highly educated. We're all bachelor's degree holders, but we are likely not content experts in your field. Every once in a while, you might get lucky and your work happens onto the desk of someone who shares your background, but you should be prepared to present your research. Isteer, I think, used the word lay people. That's the word I use as well to a lay person that is highly educated but not sharing in your specialty. So we don't actually accept full research papers as a part of our application process to review. If you send us a link, we're not clicking on it. We're not going in. So we want to hear about your experience through your activities list, through your essays, through your recommendations. And it's very much being able to speak to that experience side of it that is important in our process. Every once in a while, we'll see some information that's really compelling that we want to understand a little bit further, and we might go talk to one of our associate deans, chat with a faculty member. But if I took every project that I saw in computer science to my friend Tom, I'm pretty sure that Tom would put out a cease and desist letter on me to make sure I didn't show up at his office anymore. So our capacity to do that is limited. Our faculty don't have the bandwidth to look at every one of our applications.
Yeah. Got it. Great. Well, so you mentioned, put it on your activities list. And our second little thing on the topic was resumes. So let's pivot a little bit because we're kind of thinking about, we would like to know if a student has done really cool things and great things in an effort to be passionate, to be learning, but they just don't know where to put it on the application. And they feel like, oh, I already filled out my activities and I still have some things to say. So can I give you my resume? Thoughts on that?
I'll start and I'll say no. Resumes fall into that supplemental material category for us, the same way that a research abstract does, where we're going to say we're not going to look at it. So assuming you're applying on the Common application, we're exclusive on the Common app. The instructions on the activities list tell you to think about the relative importance of your activities and to list them in descending order of their impact or their importance. So my advice would be, if you have filled that activities list out, whatever's remaining should be relatively low impact. That you need to do some prioritization there in how much you're presenting, what you're highlighting, what you're presenting. You've certainly still got opportunities through your essay, through your recommendations to work in some narratives that dig deeper into those topics or maybe highlight the things that didn't make the list. But at the end of the day, I think the students that end up shining the brightest in the process are the ones that have had incredibly high quality experiences, not necessarily the ones that have had the highest quantity of experiences.
Yeah. Um, the t we don't regularly review resumes when they're submitted. They're there in the reader. And the times I've found the resumes to be most helpful are when the student has done a bad job filling out their activities list, right? So, I, and it's just, oh, they're not doing anything. It's like, oh, wait, they submitted their resume and expected us to read that. And so, I mean, don't count on that happening, because that's what the application is built to do. It gives you so much space. And like Justin said, you should be deciding what's important. If it doesn't matter enough for you to go onto your application, it's probably not significant enough to be sharing with the committee, right, in the admissions process. But there are so many opportunities, frankly, through the activities lists, through optional channels that we will look at. There's interviews and other conversations, recommendations, the essays, for your passion to come through, that I can't remember a single time where a resume has added to what's already a strong application.
Yeah, likewise, there is nothing that drives me crazier and off the wall than seeing a student with a 3-page to a 6-page resume. It's nonsensical. I've had 3 careers and 20 years of work experience, and I feel like I maybe just got to page two, like maybe. So it drives it. I think don't expect that to be read. Again, everything's on the activities list. But I will say, take some advice is if you do plan on submitting it, that is, and I get deep into your application, that is where I start to verify everything. So if you're going to give me a resume, that is fair game for me to make sure that what you said in your resume is what your recommender said about your recommendation, which is what you said you did in your activities, and what you said about research, and what you said about something else. And that's usually where lies, maybe or fabrications start to happen, right? So the more information you give us, perhaps the more scrutiny and that's just a fact, right? The more you give, the more will be analyzed during the process when we are able to dig into your application a little bit more.
So then let's talk about the activities list a little bit in terms of, how to maximize it. There is a question here of like, so sometimes because there's only 150 characters, there's some confusion on how to focus in those words, like, am I supposed to be saying the professor that I worked with, or should I just be saying the skills that I learned? Like, how would you, any advice on how to use those 150 characters well?
Impact and growth, right? And not everything will have like a world-changing impact. I think very few things will be global in scale. So you don't have to win the Pulitzer Prize, right? Like, but impact is like, how did you affect, how did your participation affect the group, affect the activity? Did you start a group? Did you need to fundraise? Like, and then how did you grow? How did you learn? And it could be either or, it could be both of those things. But in 150 words, to really distill it, it's how are you growing and learning and contributing? So that's my summary.
I'm going to be cautious about how I word this because I don't want the takeaway to be the incorrect one. But when you only have 150 words, your
Well, here
language,
it's characters. Here it's characters,
yeah,
right? This is
right.
the
I'm sorry,
each
150
activity.
characters. Goodness. Yeah, when you only have 150 characters, you want to be direct. This isn't the place to try to impress me with your vocabulary or the complexity of your grammatical structure. Like, get to the point. So some just a very quick listing of the highest impact, highest growth moments, the characteristics exhibited are the best way to go. I still want good, clean writing. We're still comparing that writing to your essays, trying to make sure that everything is consistent. But the way you're going to write in 150 characters versus the way you're going to write in a 300 word short answer response versus the way you're going to write in a 650 word personal statement, it's different tasks, right? And it shouldn't be the exact same approach to an exercise of writing. And that's sometimes where I see students, I think, trip themselves up is they're trying to write with such a degree of complexity in those 150 characters that they end up telling me nothing at the end.
Yeah. Anything to add,
Uh,
John?
yeah, I would say, treat it. I love that we're talking about resumes now. Treat it like a resume bullet point, and I'm going to give you an acronym to remember. STAR. The STAR method is the way to go. Situation, task, action, results. If you're able to put that into those four things, you can easily knock out 150 characters and show high impact in the value of your work. So, situation, tell us tell us what the environment was. Task, what were you tasked to do? Action, one or two things that you did, and results, what was the outcome of that? And generally speaking, you can get 150 characters in.
All right. Thank you for that advice. um, awesome. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about. It's already been mentioned a few times, but you are kind of looking for a thread. You're looking for a story. You're looking, the physics, marine science story. You're like, if there's something that kind of doesn't fit in the puzzle. So I think students get really focused on like, does this fit? Does this fit? How yeah, any words of advice on how to like make your story cohesive or how to be reflective about that? And as because the majority of these people are juniors, they probably have done a fair amount in their high school already. So just any advice on how they should be thinking about this summer and how to put that story together.
I think your task is a lot easier if you have done things out of your own interest and curiosity. Um, because right, if you have upfront chosen things based on this grand ambition to later on assemble them into a narrative that colleges will find compelling, that's the wrong reason to go about it to begin with, you know? And so carry that sense of genuineness, being genuine, throughout the whole process in your time as a high school student and choosing your activities and building your college application. Even if you do come to this realization of, I was doing things because I thought I needed to build a resume and 20 things, and then I realized at this point, oh, I didn't, and maybe this is why there's a turn, or this is how I pursued something different in the summer, or this is why I'm now applying to the colleges I'm applying to, but my activities, set of activities might look like this. It's just as important to also learn about what you aren't interested in through your activities, and it's okay to share that. Not everything you do has to be something you're the most excited about, right? And half of the students we see going through undergrad will change their major when they're here. And so we also like to see that form of exploration and growth through your high school time. So sit down and be honest with yourselves, and don't try to make up reasons for why you did things that weren't really there in the first place. What you've done is done. What you're doing is going to happen, right? But I think where you start to fail is if you try to build an artificial construct around all of this that isn't meant to be there.
Yeah.
And I would say, put your energy in the college search into looking for campuses that are going to be a good fit for who you are. Sometimes I think students get too caught up in trying to mold themselves into a good fit for a college or a campus instead of the other way around. And what I mean by that, you've got three great institutions here today. If you really interrogated our processes and you created a Venn diagram of what makes a great Caltech student, what makes a great Carnegie Mellon student, and what makes a great Swarthmore student, there's going to be a little bit of overlap, but we're distinct places. We're different communities. So being genuine and thoughtful in this process, presenting yourself authentically, but making sure that you're looking for campuses that are a good fit for you are really, really important. So John, you raised the example of that student that wants to be a physicist but has done research completely unrelated to physics. That would land differently at CMU. I don't think that that would concern our committee, but we're a much larger community than Caltech, right? So we maybe have the space in our freshman class to say, yeah, we want some students that are interested in physics, that they've really been deep with physics. But I bet if we pull in that student with this broad background in biology, maybe they're going to ask some different questions. Maybe that's going to make the research in that community land a little differently. But the size of our community affords me the opportunity to make that decision in different ways, right? So don't get too caught up in trying to mold yourself into the perfect applicant. Look for the college that's the right fit. I know that was kind of spinning your question there a little bit, Gloria, but
No, no, that's great. I mean, it is a lot of why I invite different types of institutions to be on a similar, I mean, to be on one topic panel, because I think as we've learned in Tuesday Talks, the answer is always it depends. But that's why we want you to do the research. We want you to hear a little bit from each of these schools and then go learn a little bit more about their institutions and their communities to see, like, well, is this somewhere that I could see myself and would want to be at? I know that there are a lot of people who are looking to this summer as a way to, boost boost their experiences. So, any recommendations on how to make the most of your junior summer? Quote unquote, make the most. And you guys have touched on some of this already, like find the thing that you love to do. Like I think that is probably the biggest level of advice, but any other things to add?
That 100%. I think find your passion, find something you're interested in. I'm also going to say, so be where your feet are. I mean, if it's the summer before your junior year, you're probably 16, 17 years old. I mean, how many totally unscheduled summers are you going to have left in your life? Not many, right? So if you want to do that commitment with a summer camp as a counselor that's going to be a few weeks, or spend a couple of weeks on a college campus or whatever it is, but then you also just want to spend a month in your hometown, spend some time with your friends, with family, you don't need to schedule every waking minute of that summer. Take it from someone that's staring down the barrel of my 40th birthday. I would love to have a summer with no commitments, and I know I don't have one of those coming until I retire. So also be where your feet are. Find the things you're passionate about. You should do something productive in your summer, but don't get so caught up in it that you lose one of those last free summers of your life.
I think it's also fine to just do something like a summer job, like go work at an ice cream shop. I really resonate with Justin's response. Like, most of the students we have aren't, again, paid research, opportunities like they require resources. There's a lot of privilege involved as well. And again, most students don't have it. And most students coming in have just spent their summer, enjoying it a little bit. And there's so much stress in the process already. We're trying to really dial it back. So I'll just second, enjoy yourself. Take some time to be thoughtful, explore. If nerding out is how you have fun, go and nerd out. If being a lifeguard is your jam, go do that. If just hanging out with your friends for the summer is fun, that's fine. We're not gonna, see your application and be like, why wasn't there 8 weeks of research here,
Yeah, I echo all the same sentiments. Anytime I give the same advice, just have fun, enjoy your summer. I would say still be productive, but not be productive in terms of go get a research opportunity or go get a summer job. I mean, you should have one because money, you want money, money's good. But I also think it's a good time for you to kind of slowly work on those college like research, right? Like really start. Maybe you're just going to give yourself 1 hour a day to browse a website, see if an essay prompt's updated, maybe browse another website. So like really kind of start taking that time to slowly piece it together because and it's true, you really should relax the summer of your junior because there's nothing gonna be more stressful and hectic than like September, October of your senior year. It's going to be crazy. It's going, if you're applying early action, that's gonna happen. You know, shortly after getting back, you're gonna need to get all your essays done. You're gonna have to chase down recommenders. So really start thinking about, okay, who do I want my recommenders to be? Let me reach out to them. What did the essay prompts come out yet for this school and that school? Let me start thinking about that. Let me start thinking about my activities and really kind of working on those small things. And then that way, once the time comes for you to submit the application, you're pretty much 95% there.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left, and I just want to make sure we get to questions. So if you haven't asked your question yet, now is the time to go ahead and ask your question. We have, of course, because the topic was research, we have a lot of STEM people on this call, and it is there is some question about like if you're interested in engineering, like, do you need to have things in your experience that point to that? Or what if you just kind of know that you are interested in that field, but you haven't had opportunities like that? How do you see that? Do you have to have access to practical hands-on stuff?
Yeah, this will probably be another one of those, it depends, right? Like every institution might look at it a bit differently. For me, uh, we're going to have, 450 or so engineers in our freshman class. And I'm going to want a group of students that are tackling engineering from different levels of experience, different backgrounds, different interests, because that's when the most interesting things are happening. So we're going to look for some students that have that really pointy profile. They've done engineering work, they've been a part of the clubs, they've done research. They know I want to be a material science engineer. And then we're also going to take in some students that they've done a lot of STEMmy things. They know they want to be an engineer. They frankly don't yet know what material science engineering is. But they have been the lead in every school musical in their high school, right? When you get those people in a room together, interesting things are going to happen. So I'm a big baseball fan, and I always compare my job to being a general manager in this space, right? The best baseball teams have players with different talents, and it's the way those talents complement each other. You need great starting pitchers. You need a closer with an elite pitch. You need speedy guys that will get on base and steal bases. You need power hitters that will drive them in. And unless you're a Dodgers fan, you're not going to find all these skills in one player. If you're a Dodgers fan, Shohei Ohtani is a unicorn. There's no one else like him. So your job as a GM is to get all these different players. My job as an admission officer is to get students with different backgrounds, different talents, different lenses. So there's not one right or wrong answer there in terms of do you have to have a deep bench of engineering experiences to be an engineer at CMU? But again, I acknowledge that answer might be different on some other campuses.
I love this group because I think we're all very distinct in terms of our approach, right? The we're a liberal arts campus, and we have, our engineering is fully accredited. You're going to graduate from here as an engineer, but you don't apply even to a department or a program. You're going to apply it to Swarthmore. You could tell us you're an English interested person and then come to campus and take engineering, right? So there's really no way even for us to necessarily restrict you or constrain your application based on a certain major interest. That being said, don't say you're interested in English if you're really interested in engineering, because then your app won't make sense, right? Like that, going back to that genuine narrative, we don't admit by major in that way. So don't try that. The thing that we really value here, and I think Justin alluded to this earlier in a way, but we really push at Swarthmore. We're looking for the engineers who actually want to do things outside of engineering, because that's the nature of learning here at Swarthmore. It's interdepartmental, it's cross-disciplinary. We want engineers who will understand the humanistic side of engineering, who are going to be able to be those great communicators as well as understanding the technical side. So the we do find the term pointy, that student that's really single-mindedly focused on something. They do exist at Swarthmore, but they're not as common, and there are spaces for those students. But we really lean into and almost get excited by the engineer who's going to do dance, or the comp lit major who wants to explore a little bit of engineering. So that interdisciplinary interest is something we are looking for in our process.
Yeah, so we take a different approach at Caltech. We are definitely like very theoretical in the way we think about all biosciences, right? It goes back to our core calculus and physics being seen pretty much throughout. So our mechanical engineering is gonna be very different. I always say you can do Mech E at Caltech and you can do Mech E at UCLA. You're likely going to have very good education. You're going to have probably very similar outcomes, but why do you want to put yourself through this environment where things are a little bit more theoretical in that sense? I always say, for us, we're looking for a person who wants to like invent the tire, not necessarily think, okay, we're going to put the four tires and turn it into a car, right? Like that there's many other schools that are great for that, but we're really in that kind of space. Like we want to send people to space and think of like new how to live in Mars, right? So like that's kind of where we look at, even when we look at it from a mechanical engineering standpoint.
Yeah, and that's a good, I mean, I love that it's the three of you, just so, so different. So, like, yes, there on the Venn diagram, probably there are a few people that would fit at all of three, but mostly not. Um, but there was a question here, about like, um, if I wanted to do a startup, which of you three could that be a better place to be? And I John, I think of you because I remember just thinking about like, is this person wanting to do academia or is this the person wanting to be in industry was sort of a question in the room, right? So if each of you could kind of weigh in, like if I wanted to do a startup, would this be a good place for me and why?
Yeah, so we started we just had our Mid Student event last 2 weeks ago, and I was the lead for the startup session, and it was the first time ever we did one, and it was because a lot of students were wondering if Caltech is a great place for a startup, and the answer is yes. Shockingly enough, this is a fun stat that I got from that office of tech transfer and corporate partnerships is that we actually have the most startups per capita. So we're a small school, but we actually have a lot of people who go into it relative to our size. Now, I do want to put a caveat on what our startup looks like, though. Our startup is driven through research and innovation. That's how we look at startups. So if you're coming in and you're like, I want to be a software developer or I want to create the next dating app, that's not where we are, right? Like we're looking at figuring out how to cure cancer, and like those type of startups, like using research to really drive that. And that's what our startup is like. So if you're just looking to found a company, for the, just out there, which is everyday use, it's probably, maybe, but might not be the best fit for you. But startup culture does exist on campus.
Yeah, we have an entrepreneurship center called the Schwartz Center here at CMU. It's co-located with our Tepper School of Business, but it serves students, faculty, and staff from all of our programs. And I think that's one of the places where our intersection of technical expertise, design thinking, and business can set up our students quite well. So there are hundreds of companies in the city of Pittsburgh that have spun off from ideas at Carnegie Mellon. Probably the most prominent of them is Duolingo, the language learning app, but there are plenty of other examples you'll find in Pittsburgh. So we have an entrepreneur in residence in the Schwartz Center. We offer a full curriculum as a minor in entrepreneurship. I think it's a pretty good culture. Very generous IP rights in terms of students maintaining their intellectual property in the overwhelming majority of cases. Uh, I'd say the biggest thing to be realistic about is you really have to have a developed idea to get to the point that like you're getting financial support. You're actually taking an idea to market. It's usually a process that takes years. And I think sometimes I talk to students that think it's going to be a process that'll take weeks or months. it's going to be a much longer runway than that to really get a startup off of the ground.
And Swarthmore, it's an interesting dynamic at Swarthmore. I'm not going to say it's a bad place for entrepreneurship. Certainly, folks can. We just had SWAT Tank a couple of weeks ago, sort of the analog to Shark Tank, where students presented their startup proposals, and there is actual funding and awards to go to those students with the best ideas. Um, but there's a lot of sort of emphasis on the academia side of things here. So students are going to graduate from here and get jobs and go into all sorts of industry and go to grad school. But I think the same kind of at other institutions, you've already just heard about like folks to focus on IP and managing patents and all that. Like those steps aren't necessarily as robust, I think, at Swarthmore as they may be at other places. And that's not to say folks haven't started things up while they're here. So it's a very well-resourced campus. I think it's the kind of student we attract, right, on whether they want to tap those resources or not.
Amazing. Well, there are so many other questions. And so I want to make sure that if you heard something cool about each of these institutions that you're like, ooh, that school might be the one for me, or I would like to learn more. I want to put their contact information up. They have plenty of virtual sessions, I'm sure, as well, where you can ask very, very niche questions as well. But just here's the information if you want it. We will have this recording on our website. So if you came in late and you missed some things, you feel free to listen there. I do want to ask one more question just because it came up several times. And I feel like you all addressed it, but still it came up so many times on the multiple channels that I just feel like I have to ask it again. Pay to play research people are actually using that term. Do you look at it with disdain or do you look at it with this is helpful information?
So our Dean of Admissions has been very open about wanting to burn down the pay-to-pay apparatus, so research apparatus. So although we don't look at it with disdain, I will say there are times when we see it and we're like, But I'm gonna say the caveat to this is that if you have the resources and this is something you want to pursue, and this pay-to-play actually fits with your profile, then yes, right? Like if you're like, okay, I was only able to get this, I'm really interested in this one aspect, and this pay to play is this one aspect that I'm doing, and it's really gonna help me intellectually, it's gonna help me in terms of really figuring things out. Then yeah, that's a good thing because then that's a positive narrative. But if all we see are just pay to play research in your profile and it has nothing to do with the rest of the story, then to be quite frank, it was a waste of money on your part.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It's not a black and white situation. There are a number of organizations out there that yeah, they'll charge a fee from students that can afford it, and they use those fees to subsidize the experience for students that have need. I mean, it's the same way we use our tuition dollars. It's the same way a lot of companies operate. So we don't want to take a black and white if it's paid research, it doesn't count approach to this. But at the same time, by looking for the underlying characteristics, if you are paying to get your name on a paper that you did not significantly participate in the process of, you're not going to be able to demonstrate any of the characteristics we value. It is a frequent occurrence that we see applications that in the additional info section, they list half a dozen publications. There's no other indication of research experience anywhere else in that application. I can tell you that additional info section might as well have been left blank at that point. It does not help us. But if it's a program that it charged a fee, but you're getting a high quality experience and you can speak to that experience in your essays, that's not a bad thing necessarily, but focus on experience if you are planning on paying for a research opportunity. Make sure that it's a high quality one.
It exists, as you know, both Justin and John have said, like it's we're not going to penalize students who have paid to do research for sure, but it's about how you've engaged with it. We're not going to penalize students for not doing a pay-to-play experience, and I think that's the real question around equity, right, and privilege that comes up with pay-to-play opportunities, is that you're not disadvantaged, and so we're not driving students to fork up these resources and money to participate in a program that will make their college app look better. So, you know, as you go through these and as you enter college, whether it's a pay-to-play scheme, whether it's AI, you know, if you're being disingenuous about engaging in the learning process or whatever experience it is, it's gonna come through, or rather it's not gonna come through because you're not gonna be able to talk about it in a really meaningful and substantive way. So there's all sorts of shortcuts you can take in life. If you're gonna pay for something, you know, make the most of it, so that it will actually add value to yourself, right? Because ultimately, you're the one who cares most about yourself and your outcomes. We're going to make assessments and things, but if you're cheating yourself, and you're the only one who knows that.
Well, thank you so much, all three of you. This has been really great. And we could talk for hours about this topic and there are a lot of questions about a whole lot of other things. So keep tuning in to Tuesday Talks, because I'm keeping track of these questions so that we can kind of fold them into future talks. We're taking another just a week of break, but then we'll be back for another holistic review session, which a lot of these questions that I'm seeing will touch on, and you'll get another look from a whole nother group of schools. But I think the takeaway here is, like, you gotta take do the work of just kind of understanding who you are as a person and not worry so much about what other people think of you as a person, because you'll see, even in this, if you use the same Common App for these three schools, it would have a very different effect on the three institutions. So really think about who you are as opposed to what you think other people want you to be. So enjoy the rest of your day, your evening. Justin is here. John, thank you so much for taking time to spend with us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah.